Okay, very good. Okay. So as Shrikant Mode mentioned, this is going to be talking about some somewhat controversial topics. So we are not going to really tell you exactly what to think, right? These are just some ideas as a first degree approximations of how you could possibly start putting, like basically how you can start handling the topic, right? Because there are always, it's a very complex topic, and we are not going to sit here and, in another 30, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So we are not going to here solve this problem. It's a very complicated problem. So we are not going to solve it in half an hour or 45 minutes. But we just wanted as a team to that we should at least make you aware of some of the arguments, and of course everything here is open to interpretation and question, right? But yeah, I just wanted to say that at the outset. Okay. So key objectives. So primarily we have three objectives for this segment of the talk. First is to kind of familiarize ourselves. We all know this, nothing new here, but what are the reasons why we should learn any language, right? So we want to kind of talk about that first. Then in the second part of the talk, we are going to make a distinction between Indic thoughts and Indic language, because sometimes, given our current state of the situation, like situation of our civilization, where we are realistically, we sometimes have to make these trade-offs, right? Between going for Indic thought versus Indic language. So the way I would put it is, let's say you have a Malayalam speaking Islamic person on Tulsi Gabbard. Those are your choices, right? Tulsi Gabbard doesn't speak any Indic language, but she is a very Indic person, right? Who would you rather be friends with, right? So we need to kind of make some tough choices there. So that's what the second part of the topic is going to be. The third one is we're going to revisit some of widely believed ideas that are circulating very widely within India. I'm not necessarily saying that all of us subscribe to everything here, but these are just some widely circulating ideas. So we're going to take a stab at them. Louder? Okay. Yeah. Maybe I'll just use this. Yeah. Is this better? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let's actually start with the first part. So I've listed a few of the reasons why you should learn any language. Right? First is just Matrabhasha. It's just your mother tongue. So we are all attached to our own Matrabhasha. So that's like one very good reason why you would learn any language. The second reason is to access the knowledge in that language, right? So for example, how many here are familiar with the book of Irodov, right? There is a physics book, right? So it was a Russian book which got translated, right? And so that is one reason, right? That's an obscure book now, I guess, but to access knowledge in a language, you'd learn that potentially, right? And to appreciate the beautiful works in that language, that's another reason. And other practical reasons. If you are going to be employed in Germany, you go learn German and so on. And finally, the joy of learning a new language itself, right? A lot of us really like to learn something new. It depends. You'd learn carpentry, for example, even though you don't need it for any practical reasons. So something like that. So can anyone think of any other reason why you would learn a language? These are just examples. Exactly. Yeah. Carry forward the traditions. Yeah. Very good. Communicate. Yeah.
Music.
Yes. Yeah. Art forms. Yes. Music also. Yes.
Good for health.
For health. Yeah. Maybe.
Better brain development.
Yes. Okay. Shrikant Mode, do you have anything?
No. I think BCG wanted to say something first.
Yeah.
Culture.
Culture? Yeah. Propagating culture for sure. Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Bragging rights.
Huh?
Bragging rights.
Yeah. I know so many languages, right? Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So these are all very valid reasons, right? So you kind of have to see, and depending on a person's socioeconomic status and their pre-existing situation, some or all of these reasons might be applicable, right? So we cannot tell anybody top down that hey, you should do this, you should do that, right? That doesn't go well. So that's the part that I just wanted to sensitize everybody. Okay, so I'd really like to start off the core with this analogy, right? So think of Sanskritam language itself or any other Indic language, right? I'm just going to use Sanskritam as an example because it's a common root for all of us, but you could really think of any Indic language in this context. The Sanskritam language itself is analogous to this beautiful pot over here, right? And despite the pot might be beautiful, but despite its beauty, the whole point of the pot is to hold its content, right? Like the earlier example, you could use an Indic language, like let's say Malayalam, but have poisonous thoughts, right? So despite its beauty, the whole point it was created in the first place is to hold the Amritam, let's say, right? Without the pot, the Amritam wouldn't exist today, right? If you never had the pot, the Amritam itself you wouldn't have had. But without Amritam, the pot is also pointless, right? So you kind of have to appreciate both sides of it. And next 4 slides, right, it's not meant for anybody to read things through, but it's just, I asked Perplexity.ai to generate, couple of major works and bunch of Indic languages, right? So as you can see, Sanskritam, Prakritam, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam, Marathi, Bengali, Gujarati, Hindi, Punjabi, all these, right, amazing languages, right? Assamese, Oriya, Nepali, every Indic language is a gem that needs to be preserved, right? That's the big picture point, right? That there is no point, all of them are in danger right now of going extinct, right? So there is no point in any intra-India or intra-India Indic language fights. Those things are all very detrimental, right? Any kind of binary thinking that you employ in that area is very counterproductive. So that is the reason we just had these 4 slides. Okay. And another analogy to have in your mind is the analogy between, or the difference between, a rainforest, a very healthy looking rainforest, and a monoculture, right? So in the rainforest, every nook and cranny is going to be filled by an organism or a plant, right? Every single thing. There is no weeds. Not one plant there is useless. Everything is doing its job somewhere, right? And that is a good analogy to whole Indic culture, but especially to the Bhashas of Bharatam also. And right now, this once healthy rainforest is kind of in pretty bad shape, right? It is still there, still alive, but it's in bad shape, and the progress is kind of 1, 2, and 3. It's kind of going in this direction. So we are running the risk of the rainforest turning into eventually a desert. The alternative model that is being pushed world over, and especially in India, is this monoculture form, right? Where except one true crop, right? Everything else is a weed. So if you are doing this maize farm, let's say, and sugarcane grows there, that's going to be that's a weed, right? So this is exactly what I mean by binary mindset, right? Oh, this is good, that is bad, right? This is another analogy I would really like all of you to have in mind, because I'm going to be talking about some, like I said, a little bit controversial topics. So these 2 analogies, Sanskritam or language as a pot to hold good content, and the analogy of rainforest versus monoculture, these 2 analogies are very important, for you to kind of appreciate the dilemma we are all in. We are all together as a civilization. We are in this tough dilemma. So I really would like everybody to appreciate that. And so these are all, in Tamil there is a thing called PDI. So what PDI means? How do I say that in English? So PDI is the part of the talk that you give so many disclaimers before you get to the core, right? So far everything, including this slide, is a disclaimer for all the stuff that's going to show up. So the final disclaimer slide here is, just 2 key dharmic ideas again to remember. The first one from Rigveda, right? Where we were just saying, let noble thoughts come to us from all sides. It doesn't matter where the good ideas are going to come from. We are really open to ideas. That's the key point. Noble ideas, right? It's not like, oh, let me pick up all the junk from the rest of the world, right? It's not that. And then the other one is this sloka, right? This is a beautiful sloka. Akashat patitam toyam yatha gacchati sagaram sarvadeva namaskaraha kevalam pratigacchati, right? So that thought itself is an alien thought to a lot of Westerners, right? Just they would say only my river is the only river, something like that, right? So this is the true Indic way of thinking. Any exclusivist thinking that we harbor in our conversation in Bharat or here, those are all we should recognize, those are all externally influenced thoughts that we should work hard to eliminate from our thinking whenever we are thinking about Bharatiya languages. Okay, so a rose by any other name, right? That's a common thing that lot of very westernized people say. How does it matter what language you learn as long as you learn, right? So I want to make a distinction here. So let's say you have a pot and you say this is Ghatam or Ghataha as a pot. There is absolutely no loss in knowledge. A pot is something physical that you can see in front of you, and irrespective of the language you use, it makes no difference at all in the ideas that you are communicating. There is zero information loss. Whereas when you say namaste and handshake or greeting gestures, you are making a fundamental mistake. The reason is namaste at its core, it says I bow to the divinity within you. That's a very Indic thing, right? And it is not a physical thing, it's not a concrete thing. Whereas handshake, you go to the history of it, evolved from the Roman thing of grasping the other person's forearm to make sure they don't have a knife hidden, they are not coming close to you to kill you. So these two are not at all comparable, right? They're fundamentally different. So, and this is very important. So whenever we are forced to use English, we have to be cognizant. I think the fact of the matter is we are in the US, and in this day and age we cannot avoid English, right? I'll be making some points related to that, but we shouldn't be using English universally, right? Blindly. So that is the key point over here. So here, maybe we could do a very quick group activity, and people who already know Sanskritam, right? They shouldn't probably take part in this activity, but everybody else, just a very quick one. So are you? Is there anybody here who is not familiar with the Indic word papa or papam? Everybody knows, right? Okay. So and it's opposite punyam or punyaha, right? Okay. So if I ask you, everybody knows that those two are opposite words of each other, yeah? Okay. So if, how would you translate papam in English? Sin. Very good. Okay. So now let's go back to the Sanskritam words. If I do a good thing, I get punya. If I do a bad thing, I get papa. Right? Now let's just translate papa to sin. If I do a bad thing, I get sin. And if I do a good deed, I get, you have to fill in the blanks with one English word.
Blessing.
Can anybody give me an English word?
Blessing.
Blessings? No, right? Blessings and curse. Yeah, good try.
Only one way.
So that isn't exactly right. I think the difficulty that we are having, the short answer is there isn't a single one. The reason is, Papa again, it's not a concrete thing like gutter, right? It's a philosophical concept. And if you go to the English definition of the word sin, sin comes from the Christian concept of original sin, because Adam ate this forbidden apple, the fruit of knowledge. Literally it is called fruit of knowledge. God in their tradition forbids them from eating knowledge fruit. Literally, right? And that is the original sin. Because of it, every human being born from that day onwards is a sinner by definition, right? There is absolutely no equivalent of Papa Punya concept at all that they have. So whenever you do the translation in your head, saying Papam is sin, you are making this fatal mistake, which is saying that Namaste and handshake are the same, right? Subject to this disclaimer, we have to use English. Just like, the same kind of overall theme as what Shrikant Mahadev mentioned, right? You still have to use English script to make things easier for us to communicate our slokas and thought process and so on, but let's use IAST, right? The same way we have to Sanskritize English whenever we need to communicate Indic ideas. So that's the overall point here. And here we are not going to go through each word here. I just wanted to, in case you're not familiar, I really highly recommend Sanskrit Non-Translatables by Rajiv Malhotraji. It's a great book. And some of the common things like Shastra, saying Shastras are scriptures, Purana is mythology, Itihasa is history, all these things are all Murti is not idol, Atma is not soul. Every one of these have very different meaning. These are all philosophical concepts. They are not physical objects like a table or a bench. So here, when you do blind translation, you are doing, in some sense, violence to the language, right? So that should be avoided. And the same concept exists in the opposite direction too. So, for example, in fact, I literally have heard people talking about christening of a Hindu temple, literally, and without any kind of thought processes, literally, right? So the non-translatables exist in the other direction too. So people talk about Genesis, that is a very Christian thing, right? All these things, crusades, scripture, idol, the souls resting in peace, rip, right? Everybody says rip. All those things is such a Christian thing to say. And even ethnic, the moment somebody says ethnic, right? In India, believe me, right? In Chennai, there are so many ethnic dressed shops, exactly, ethnic wears. It's unbelievable to me. They don't understand the word ethnic literally means slave, right? Like that is the intent or the way in which it is conveyed, right? Oh, Western European thing is a standard. Everybody else is like ethnic, right? It is kind of used in a very derogatory way. All people don't get it. We think, oh, ethnic, it's mine is special, right?
We have ethnic day.
Yeah, exactly, right? It is like celebrating your own enslavement, right? And South Asian is the other thing, right? Like every company has a South Asian this and South Asian that, and even the old Indology departments are all completely South Asian studies these days, right? Even that, which South Asian country would you like to be associated with? Pakistan? Bangladesh? Really? This is the Indians here doing that, right? In my company there is a South Asian group. Everybody driving it as an Indian, pretty much, right? Why would they go for that kind of branding? I have no clue, right? Because we are clueless about this subtlety in the language translations, both ways. That is what is at the root of a lot of this problem, right? So, yeah, and similarly, somebody being a blue-eyed boy, this kind of Eurocentrism is there in our language everywhere. We got to, and it affects all of us, right? I might have just learned it yesterday, but or day before. It doesn't mean that I'm out of it, right? I'm susceptible as anybody else in that. All of us are, right? So the point is not to become free overnight. It's not going to happen, right? A lot of the problems have been there for last several generations, right? We are not going to fix this overnight, but we just have to go in the right direction. So that is the point of this slide. Okay, now coming to the core, potentially controversial part of the talk. So these are some of the claims, right? And I've kind of bundled under 5 categories. So linguistic claims, language and scripts are the same thing. Languages belong to a family, like Indo-European, Dravidian. Like, how many of you have heard of this Dravidian language stuff, right? Everybody, I'm sure, right? Yeah.
Every day we are
Exactly. Yeah. And then there are these very interesting claims on Tamil and its relationship with Sanskritam. And me, coming from Chennai, right, I hear this, I get an overdose of this. Tamil is this oldest language. Tamil and Sanskritam are somehow totally alien to each other. And then there is this other interesting claim which says all languages are descended from Sanskritam. So we're going to look at them. And there is this other set of claims regarding Hindi. They're saying it's the national language. It is closer to Sanskritam than all other Indic languages. These are the other claims. And then fourth, this is my favorite, quote unquote favorite ideas. We should basically not use English to learn IKS or anything Indic. Similarly, using Western frameworks in Indic IKS concepts should be avoided. This is what I would call an exclusivistic idea, right? And then another exclusivistic idea is for India and Indian civilization to be strong, we should have one centrally enforced top-down language. Because, hey, everybody has it. France, it is French, and Spain, it is Spanish, and so on. So somebody has it, so we should have it, without really thinking things through, right? And the final one is people can go to the other end of the spectrum, saying if I say, we have to use IAST or we have to use English to do the right thing in the big picture, people might have to go to the other end of the spectrum, right? Saying English is the only useful language, why should I learn anything else? So we're going to look at all these claims one by one. Okay, in case you have seen this slide before, please don't answer. But for everybody else, I'd really like all of us to take stabs at guessing the language for each line. Can anybody guess what this is? Okay, very good. And then next one? Tamil. Okay. The third one? Punjabi, Gujarati. Yeah, both good guesses. Okay, this one? Gujarati. Very good. And then this one?
Bengali.
Assami, Tibetan. Yeah, very good guess.
Tibetan.
And then this one?
Sinhalese.
Thai. Yeah, they're all good guess. Yes. And then the last one, I think is easy. Urdu. Yeah. Okay. So, unfortunately, all good guesses, but they're all wrong. Because they're all Sanskritam. Every one of them is Sanskritam. Everyone says, every line here says, Purushaya Tubhyam Namaha. Right? So the purpose of this slide is to show that language and scripts are not the same. This one misconception is the root of so much problems in our language debates these days. Just this one misunderstanding, deep misunderstanding. So the first one is indeed Kannada. Next is Tamil Grantha. This is Kashmiri Sharada script. This is Gujarati Modi script. This is Tibetan script. Still Sanskritam. 100% Sanskritam. Right? This is Thai. This is Arabic. Right? And these are all as valid as Devanagari. And this is IST. Right? As valid. Equally valid ways of writing the same language. So the script is different, language is different. So that is the first part. The second question is, do languages belong in a tree? Right? And this is where the whole Dravidian language, Indo-European language, all this family comes in. And if you look at a typical Western text, right, they'll say, okay, this is a Proto-Indo-European. They come up with an arbitrarily old language that they would like. They call it PIE, Proto-Indo-European. And apparently it split into two and went in two different ways, and they model it as a tree. And in science, right, usually when I say that, when I, let us say, propose a theory, and for it to be tested in strict physical sciences, the moment you have one counterexample, the theory falls. The reason theory of relativity still stands is because to date, millions of experiments, every time you actually use your GPS, it is testing Einstein's special theory of relativity. Every single time anybody uses GPS, right? So in science, the moment it is proven wrong once, everybody admits that it's wrong. But unfortunately, linguistics being social science, people double down, right? When you give them evidence that, hey, this stuff doesn't work, they double down, right? So, but in our case, we really want to approach this scientifically, right? Systematically. So there is one example that just disproves this entire tree theory of language, essentially. Does anybody have a guess as to what this language is? Very good guess. Okay. Cannot see you. I'm sorry. How do I make it bigger? Yeah, we'll send these slides. But so this one is called Manik Praval. It is a hybrid language of Tamil and Sanskrit. So in the European way of thinking, Tamil doesn't even come in here, right? There is no Tamil here. But here you have a language that is a proper hybrid of two. So they cannot, because things are very simple in Europe, right? Where there is just very little diversity of languages and cultures comparatively, right? They come up with very simplistic theories and they try to fit everything in a box. Unfortunately, for them and also for us, actually, doubly unfortunately, nothing in India fits inside a box. Anything you say about India, the exact opposite also sometimes equally true, right? So India is a very, very diverse place. So any kind of social science theory that Europe comes up with, ends up falling flat in India, but our people just internalize it. We end up twisting ourselves into pretzels to fit somebody else's stupid ideas, right? So anytime somebody says, there are these so many languages, language families and so on, you have to question, right? Not to say that it's completely wrong, right? There are some valid points why this model is a decent model, but not 100% accurate, right? So the implications that they start with a simple model and then they make many jumps and implications from that. Those are the jumps that are invalid, right? This model itself has some validity. Okay, so I think we addressed the first bucket. The second bucket talks about the relationship between Tamil and Sanskritam and some of the claims about Tamil, right? So I'm kind of going to use analogy from two different areas, both of them in biology, but different parts of biology. So one is the process of mitosis. So what happens is you have a mother cell that consumes energy and nutrition from outside, right? And then let's say the mother cell becomes ready to split. Every content that is finally produced in the two daughter cells are already there in the mother cell. There is not a single subcomponent that finally comes out of the two daughter cells that doesn't already exist in the mother cell. Okay? So from the leftmost point you have only one cell and then it ends up becoming two daughter cells. Now, does it make sense for any of these two daughter cells? So let's say, like this one has 50 components and you have, let us say, totally 100 components, you number them 1 through 100. And 1 to 50 goes to this cell, 51 to 100 goes to this cell. Which of these two cells is the oldest cell? Can any cell claim to be the exclusive oldest cell? Exactly, right? No, nobody can claim. They both are equally old or equally new. The same way, if you look at, the relationship between the different great ape species, right? So this one is a orangutan, gorilla, human beings, chimpanzee and bonobo. Bonobos are so-called pygmy chimpanzees. Yeah, so these are all 5 different. So the real tree is much more complicated, right? This is a very simplistic diagram. The MYA here stands for million years ago. So if you go 9 to 13 million years ago, all these 5 branches, basically we had the same set of parents, identical ancestry, right? And then orangutan split. Then these other 4, they had common ancestry for a while, and then gorilla split, and again common ancestry for the remaining 3, and then we split before chimpanzees and bonobos. So they are much more recently split than us in that sense, right? Now, which of these can claim to be more evolved than others? So if each of them, so this is actually one of the most, often seen misconception in evolution. Evolution, people think that it always leads to better results. No. Evolution results in better fit to the environment. If a meteorite drops on us right now and just, repeats the dinosaur extinction event, then viruses and bacteria and all will survive because they are a better fit for the environment at that point in time. So evolution does not mean things always will improve. So a chimpanzee alive today is exactly as evolved as a human being today, which is exactly as evolved as a virus today. None of them is more evolved or less evolved, right? They are all better fits for the environment on whatever specialty that they are occupying in the whole scheme of things. So in the same way, you have a mother language. Let's say whatever the common mother language between today's Kannada, Telugu, Tamil, and Malayalam, right? And it's very clear. Just if you analyze the languages, Kannada and Telugu kind of split off first from Tamil and Malayalam. And then from the Kannada Telugu branch, Kannada and Telugu split up. Again, this is also simplified one, right? It's not as simple as this. But generally, for the first order of approximation, it is true. Then finally, you have these 4 modern day languages. Can any one claim to be older than the other? Exactly, right? So none of them can claim. So it makes no sense to call any language oldest. So that, I guess, I hope uh, these analogies prove the point there. Okay. And then the next claim is Sanskritam and Tamil are totally different. That's a politically motivated claim. So here we have, this is a slide from Project Shiva Home, a very, very good YouTube website. I mean YouTube channel. And you have all these languages, right? All these Indian languages listed. And you have the exact same sound. Everything listed in each of these languages, right? The scripts might be different. The sounds, the way in which it is organized is all identical, right? So claiming Tamil and Sanskritam are as totally different is just politically motivated claim, nothing more than that. The way I see it is that they are more like sister languages. They are not identical, of course, but they are sister languages. Why? Because they share so much of the grammar, the way words are arranged, the way poetry is done, everything, right? And if anybody who actually reads Tirukkural, they will see that Tirukkural is as dharmika book as it gets, and it is just political claims that it is somehow not a Hindu book, right? And I think we are running low on time, right?
3 more minutes.
3 more. Yeah. So the way in which Tamil and Sanskritam and other Indic languages are sisters, the reason I'm saying it is that the order of alphabet, right? How as Srikanji mentioned, it's the same in pretty much all Indic languages. The word order also doesn't vary. For example, when you say Ramaha, Ravanam, Hatavan, you can change these things in any order, the meaning remains the same. It is true in Tamil, it is not quite true in Hindi, but in all other Indic languages, it is the same. And the overall grammatical structure is still very, very similar to Sanskrit. Okay, and next I think we go to the claims on Hindi. So is Hindi the national language of India? That's another often seen claim. If you look at it technically, right, Hindi is not a national language. It is a official language, one of the 2 official languages. It is not the national language. There is no national language in India. There are 22 scheduled languages. Each of them is official in their respective states. There is no one official, one national language, anything in India. And the picture here is basically like a colorful rainforest, right? This is the strength of India, true strength of India. When you try to homogenize things from top down or by force, you are going to lose a rainforest. We are going to become the culture form, which is exactly what we don't want. And any kind of saying, oh, this is national language, everybody should do it, that is exactly the same binary thinking as these Dravidian folks, like who are all bhaktas of this Robert Cadwell. He's the guy who came up with this Aryan Dravidian divide, right? And both these extremes are doing equivalent damages from opposite sides. And the other claim is that Hindi is the closest language to Sanskrit. This also unfortunately stems from the script, Devanagari script. So the fact is that universal use of Devanagari for Sanskrit is a very recent phenomenon. As I showed in the other slide, throughout India there are actually like 18 or more regional variants of scripts that were used to write Sanskrit. And this one is an example from Angkor Wat in Cambodia. It's a Khmer script, still Sanskrit, right? So whole of Bharatavarsha, this was the trend. There was no standardization, centralization at all. People had their own freedom, but the language was still Sanskrit.
In fact, my father was sharing how at some point in time they were considering using the Roman script or the Urdu script for writing Hindi.
Yeah, correct.
And after a lot of argument, they said no, we should use Devanagari to write Hindi.
Exactly right. Yeah, use of Devanagari for Hindi was a political decision, right? Made after independent India. And so these are all relatively recent as far as India's history is concerned. Like 200, 300 years is nothing in our history, right? So Hindi is not the closest language to Sanskrit. And ideally, right, in a setting like this, we should be using Sanskritam as our linked language, just like in ancient India. But the reason is that Sanskritam nourishes our local languages, right? It doesn't smother like what English does, right? But given the practical reality that not all of us are fluent enough to speak in Sanskritam, if we want to choose from existing Indian languages today, Malayalam is the closest language to Sanskrit that we have to pick, right? Hindi is not the closest language. In terms of the raw number of words shared with Sanskritam, Malayalam takes by far the top spot. And if you really care about national integration, then we should revive a language like Mani Pravalam, which has, elements from both Sanskritam and, Tamil and branches languages. And that would be a better approach. So saying that we should all speak in Hindi, I understand the sentiment of where it is coming from. Hey, we need something common to unify us as a country, but for us it's a bad fit. And trying to force that down is going to result in breaking us. And the bottom line here is that Hindi is not more or less Indic than any of the other languages in India. And finally, I think I just want to repeat the two slokas we looked at earlier. Ironically, right, anyone who is claiming we should exclusively use Indic languages only or Indic frameworks only is falling into the trap of Western binary thing, right? The dharmic thing to do is to use all tools available to advance the cause of dharma, especially when our long-term survival itself is at stake right now, right? We just cannot afford to have these impractical fights, as I see it. And as long as they are appropriate, subject to that caveat, we should use every tool available to us to fight. And I really like this Deng Xiaoping quote. Deng Xiaoping was, like in at least my metric, the person who has pulled most number of people out of poverty, right? He's a Chinese premier after Mao. And he said this: no matter if it is a white cat or a black cat, as long as it catches mice, it's a good cat, right? And he was saying it in the context of communism versus capitalism, right? In the same way, more important than which language one speaks is whether the thoughts are Indic, right? And that way we don't fall into this exclusivistic thought, oh, only this language, only that language, right? Or only this framework, only that framework. No, none of them, right? See whether it actually gets you closer to your objective. If it does, go for it, right? The Indic thoughts are more important than, rigid adherence to Indic languages. Okay, and so the other thing is, should dharmic Indians learn English? So like I said here, I'm saying here, I cannot believe I'm even posing this question, but I just wanted to give one data point. Entire AI research, right, is pretty much published in English. 70% according to this number, with the Chinese being distant second, but the real impact is going to be much higher, right? Even DeepSeek came up with a paper in English, not in Chinese, right? So ironically, I fully appreciate the irony here, but learning English is needed for our language and culture to survive in today's context, right? And I want to leave you with just one thought. Usually it is always 10 to 100 times easier and simpler to destroy something than to create it, right? So you can destroy this piece of laptop in 5 minutes, but to create a laptop from scratch, it takes a lot of effort, right? It took 1,000 years for us to reach this stage, approximately, right? So it is going to take a long time for us to revive our culture fully back to health. So this is not a one generational thing, even this is a multi-generational work. So we cannot afford to quibble over smaller things. We have to look at our survival, which is more important. And so learning English is needed for our language and culture itself to survive and thrive. At least that's a reality as of right now. And and top-down central enforcement doesn't work. We've already talked. And then this is my last slide. I think, should we just learn English? And I think this slide some of you might have seen. We shouldn't just learn English because of the tremendous amount of wealth in Indic languages. So this picture here shows a 950-year-old monastery in Tibet with 84,000 manuscripts, right? But so each box you see here is one book, all in Tibetan, right? All in Sanskritam Tibetan. And this is not even, it shouldn't even show up in this pie chart, because if you look at this blue thing, that's the entire amount of Greek and Latin manuscripts combined. Amount of Sanskritam manuscripts, just catalog itself dwarfs it. The total not uncatalogued work itself is about 27 million. So, of course, we have to go beyond English, right? That is our ultimate objective. But we have to know the latest innovation, and that unfortunately is happening today in English. So we kind of have to do both. So with that, I think, so the conclusions are, all Indic languages are beautiful. They have an amazing history. Let's learn as many of them as possible. No one language can claim exclusive closeness to Sanskrit, right? And preserving Indic thought is more important than which language one speaks in. Preserving both is good, but if you are forced to, make a choice, like right now what we have, then preserving Indic thought is more important than preserving the language. And we have to be very cognizant of exclusivistic thinking. Blind aversion to English and to Western ideas and frameworks is not going to strengthen Dharma, especially in today's globalized world.